Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Copenhagen in Denmark once again and revisit one of the famous Danish gypsy breweries. So today we're going to have a taste of a beer called Mochaccino Messiah, which comes to you from To Øl. And this beer is described as being a coffee brown ale. If you have watched my channel before, you will know that I do have quite a fondness of the brown ale style, and that was simply down to the fact of Brooklyn Brown. That was one of the first beers, I think the first beer actually, that I tried in the brown ale style, and even on its as one of the better known ones, it is pretty damn good. And so my kind of love of this style has expanded ever since. And To Øl, in my experience, are a very consistent brewery. Regardless of the style of beer you pick from these guys, it is always very good. So I would recommend, if you haven't tried any To Øl stuff before, do give it a go, because regardless of whether it's an IPA, a stout, one of the more random styles like a Goes or something like that, you are going to get a very, very good beer from these guys. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be a minute or two long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other To Øl reviews that I've done for you before, and I will be adding to that in the very near future, because I will be living fairly close to Copenhagen and I'll have a good access to a big selection of their beer. I'm told there's quite a lot of To Øl and mek-ju things going on in Copenhagen, obviously. But anyway, To Øl was founded by Tobias Emil Jensen and Tore Gainter, who were actually students of Mikkel Bjergso, who, as many of you will know, is the big boss of mek-ju. And originally they brewed with him in their school kitchens back in around 2005, but they continued to homebrew until 2010, when they officially founded To Øl, which translates from Danish into English as being two beers. And I believe the reason that they chose this name for the brewery was simply the fact that whenever they needed to drink together, they needed two beers, so that's why they chose the name To Øl. But when Mikkel actually heard that his former students were still brewing and were wanting to start it up commercially, he insisted that they did a collaboration beer together, and this became the very first To Øl beer, which was a double IPA, and I think you can still get this one today actually. It's one of their more regular brews. But despite their short existence, they've gained much acclaim in craft beer circles, and these days they're distributing all over the world. You'll be able to find these guys in South America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, and all throughout Europe as well, I'm sure. I'm not sure about South Africa and things like that, but you will get these guys. I'm sure I've seen them in Japan actually too, so a very, very big distribution network for these guys too, and quite rightly, because the beer is of very good quality. But as is the case with mek-ju, they're a gypsy brewery, and so they don't own their own brewing equipment, and they rather use spare capacity at other breweries. Most of their beer is actually brewed at Lokriste Hifte, the De Proof brewery near Ghent, but in Nørrebro in Copenhagen they have a collaborative beer bar with mek-ju, which is called mek-ju and Friends, and there's also a new one just opened up in Reykjavik in Iceland. But the bar in Copenhagen has an exclusive bottle shop, and they've got over 40 different tap beers on at any one time, so a very good place to go in Copenhagen if you find yourself there and in need of a few beers. But anyway, that's your kind of brief history of To Øl. They do have a kind of core range, if you like. If you check out their website and have a look at the different beers, there's a few things that seem to come up regularly, like the First Frontier, and they're more popular beers than the higher rated ones. They do tend to brew them, you know, every 2 years or something like that, so they do kind of have a kind of rotation basis. So if you do try a beer, then it might not appear for a while, but you will get it at some point in the future if it is popular enough. But anyway, let's get on to the actual tasting of this guy. So this one is a 7% brown ale. The commercial description that was on the website for this one said, "This is our attempt of substituting the morning mochaccino coffee with a beer. You get the nicely roasted chocolate malt, some creamy lactose for the milk, and a shot of nutty espresso coffee in your mug, and then some alcohol. It seemed just as obvious as vodka in a White Russian. We do not recommend opting for this beer instead of coffee, in brackets, all the time. Original, the Monday morning Mochaccino Messiah." So it had a different name before originally, but it's a 7% brown ale. It's got a malt base of flaked oats, malted barley and coffee, and it also has an addition of lactose, as you might have guessed, and it's hopped with Simcoe, Citra, Nelson Sauvin, and also Centennial hops. So it should be a nice kind of big malty dark beer, but with some of those hops you will expect a little bit of kind of probably from the Centennial you'll expect a little bit of grassiness and floral aromaticity and things like that. Nelson Sauvin's going to give you some fruit, as will the Citra. The Citra will give you like peaches and things like that. So it should be a very interesting beer for us to try. But before we open it, I'll just let you have a little quick look at the artwork on it. I'll just bring up the camera, make sure you're seeing it. You can see the nice roasted coffee beans there. That is the typical To Øl symbol, and you can see there's coffee beans again on the top label of this, and it is just a plain bottle cap, as you always get with these guys. And you can see just on the back there, it tells you the ingredients. All of that's in Danish though, and I don't really read Danish. I'm going to learn Swedish when I move to Sweden, but I think Denmark, the Danish language is supposed to be pretty damn crazy, so I think I'll stick to Swedish. But anyway, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. So as you can see, a nice smoky opening on that. You can actually smell a little bit of fruit coming off that as you open it up. But Toyo, like I say, are one of my favourite breweries, and this beer, the actual bottle of this beer I have is perhaps, it's maybe about a year old. I think I bought this one just before I left to go to Australia, but they've actually just re-released Mochaccino Messiah, and I've seen bottles of it in my Valhalla Goat in Glasgow, so I'm sure you can actually get this one. It's been done again fairly recently, but this one, it says it goes out of date in 2017, so it's definitely still good. But anyway, as you can see, there's a big 3-finger frothy kind of beigey tan head on that. It looks very, very nice. If I bring the light up, I'll just let you see the colour of it. It's a nice sort of rosewoody kind of dark mahogany colour. There's a ruby tint to the edge. There's 1 or 2 little bits of sediment just on the bottom of the glass there. You can see teeny little bits of sediment just floating around, but there's a lot of little bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head there, and just 1 or 2 bigger ones sticking towards the side of the glass too. But overall, it looks a very, very nice beer. So let's give it a smell with this one. So it's quite interesting. You can smell the lactose, but it's not the most prominent component of the beer. But what you're going to get from this guy is a kind of roasted coffee element on the top, but it's not too punchy is what I would say. But you've got a nice kind of sweet chocolatey malt mixing in with that, and the sweet kind of the sort of sweet milky lactose, if that makes sense. You can really pick up on that. But there is a definite kind of presence from a sort of brown bready character in this. It's a kind of sort of grainy bread that's coming out. But it's mainly the coffee, and you're getting the sweet chocolatey and milkiness coming out. There is maybe a little bit of caramel, but it's quite hard to pick up just with the size of the head on this. But yeah, there's a little bit of earthy hop character too, but it's mainly a kind of roasted coffee element that's coming out of it, and the sweet milky chocolate, and that you can really pick up on the lactose out of this one. But when you sugar it up, you can smell a kind of infused, darker caramel element to it, but there is a definite grainy bread presence and a little bit of an earthy hop character. But yeah, it's quite a simple aroma. It's what you would expect, but as it always is the case with Toyo, some of their beers, the lighter beers, tend to have a very complex nose, but the darker ones are quite simple, but they're always packed with flavour. But this is the very first brown ale I'm trying, so let's get stuck into this guy. So this is the Mochaccino Messiah, a coffee brown ale from Toyo in Copenhagen, but brewed at Lokriste Hefte in Belgium, the Prof Brewery. Slanje. That's very, very nice. Wouldn't expect anything less from Toyo. But yeah, if you're trying this one, and just a little thing for you if you're wanting to actually do beer tasting yourself, take a little sip and just shove it all around your mouth and let your mouth actually adjust. With a very dark beer like this, you can get a kind of false impression of the flavours sometimes, so just let your mouth adjust to it before you actually try and identify all the different flavours with it. But yeah, to state the obvious with this one, it's a big malty beer, as you would expect when it's a brown ale, of course. But you've got a nice roasted coffee in this one. There's a kind of lingering bitterness as you move into the aftertaste, but it's not quite as strong as some of the brown ales you will come across. This one is more of a nice blend of flavours, a nice kind of infused flavoured beer, this, and it's beautiful. There's no other way to describe it. It is a beautiful beer. But yeah, it's quite interesting this. So you're getting a big kind of bready malt base, and that just lightly blankets the tongue, and on top of that you're getting the nice roasted coffee flavours, and mixed in with that you can feel it, particularly when the liquid's on your tongue. There is a kind of silky, sort of milky chocolate flavour in there too, and there's a sweet caramel that goes down the middle of the tongue, and just as you move further out towards the edges of the palate, you're getting the sort of roasted character of the coffee and a little bit of the graininess too. Yeah, Around the back corners of the palate, you'll always expect the hoppy character around the very edge of your tongue. There is a wee bit of earthiness, particularly on the sort of sides of your tongue there, but as you move more into the front of the tongue, on the kind of curved part, I think there's actually a little bit of a kind of grassy and slightly aromatic hop character. It's nowhere near as punchy as, for example, an American IPA or something like that, but it's definitely there, and it seems to be a trait with Toyo. They really love these kind of slightly fruity American hops, and there is a definite presence around the very front of the tongue there that's a kind of it's almost a kind of dark infused sort of slightly tropical, slightly citrusy fruit, but a bit of grassy and aromatic character in there. When you've got like the likes of Simcoe and Citra and Nelson Sauvin and Centennial, you know, those kind of hops are quite fruity. The Centennial is more of an aromatic-y and floral one, but Citra and Simcoe are quite fruity from what I remember. And I think Nelson Sauvin gives you a good bit of grapefruit. Citra is more of a kind of peachy flavour that you'll get out of it, and Simcoe I think is as a kind of, it's a kind of more citrusy hop, but there is a definite presence in this. You can feel it if you just pay attention to it. There is a feel of the kind of American fruity hops in this beer too, so it's quite an interesting and quite quirky brown ale, this, I would say. Yeah, you'll feel just behind the very front of your tongue there's this kind of oily feeling builds, and that's where some of these little fruity kind of characteristics are coming out in that, and that's a definite trait of these American hops that they've put in there. The Nelson Sauvin, of course, is a New Zealand one, but it's a typical characteristic of these nice big New World hops that are in this beer. So yeah, like I say, you've got a big bready malt base on this one, quite mild in the sense, but then on top of that you've got this sort of coffee character, that bitter character, and that just builds as you move into the aftertaste. Some sweet caramel that goes down the middle of the palate there, maybe a little bit of treacle too, some earthy hop on these back sides of the tongue there, but it's very, very nicely done. It's a very kind of complex and quite infused flavour, and that's typical of Toyo. It's a beautiful beer. There's no other way to describe this, really. Yeah, that fruity character really is a mix of tropical and citrusy. It's not like some brown ales where it comes off as a kind of red fruity ester. There's a definite kind of tropical and citrusy fruit element to this, and that's just these hops that they used into it. But it's a very interesting and quite quirky beer because it's got that big roasted coffee malt base there, the caramel, the bread, and it just blends together so well. That earthy hop character that you're getting out of it a little bit, I think that's the Centennial hop. That just builds a nice bridge between the coffee flavours and also the nice bready character that's in the beer. It really builds a big bridge and helps the flavour blend together really well. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, it's definitely mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth, but it's got quite an oily mouthfeel, and that helps bring out the kind of milky and lactosey chocolate flavours, but at the same time it also helps these kind of little fruity elements from the American and New Zealand hops in there. But there's a good coffee bitter character, not too strong, but that just builds as you go through the beer, and there is a little bit of alcohol warmth down here. It comes in at 7%, so you will expect something just a little mild there, and that's one thing I do notice with Toyo beers. They do feel a little bit lighter than some of the other ones, and when they do have a bit more kind of alcohol warmth in them, it is fairly noticeable. But it's a nice trait, you know. When you review beers, you do look for little traits like that in beers, and one of the things with Toyo is this kind of nice little use of the American New Zealand hops. So overall, this beer is a really beautiful brown ale. If you want something that's a little bit different and a little bit quirky, then this is for you. It's got a little hint of the American hop character, but it has everything else that you expect of a Toyo beer and of a kind of coffee brown ale. So overall, awesome beer, and it has just become available again, like I told you, so do give it a try if you get the chance. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. As always, let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it before. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this other review from Toyo, and like I told you, I will be doing more of these in the fairly near future. But slàinte for now.